Hello and welcome to this webinar on the new dashboard feature within ITrack Chromium. My name is Charles and I'm one of the developers who worked to finalize the dashboard for launch last month as well as publish the new features earlier this week. So through attending this webinar, you'll gain the knowledge and tools you need to easily and effectively determine your business's top performing salespeople, part types, and other sales metrics using the newly launched dashboard. If you want to chat with other attendees during the webinar, if you want to chat with other attendees during the webinar, be sure to change the chat recipient to panelists and attendees. You can also submit questions at any time using the Q&A button, which I'll answer at the end. I'll also take spoken questions at the end from anyone who uses the raise hand button at that time. So a brief outline. First, I'll go over some motivation for the use of the dashboard. Then I'll give a brief overview of the charts contained within it. Afterwards, I'll discuss the dashboard's interactive features, then finish by giving a preview of some brand new features that just launched this week, as well as give a peek at some future features. So moving on to our first main topic of why you'd want to use our dashboard. So some of our users have recorded nearly 100,000 sales and almost 3 times that number of sold line items. And then with this much data, it's impossible to gather anything meaningful information from it without aggregating it in some way. However, with the ITrack Chromium dashboard, you don't have to worry about that, as all the important sales metrics you need are always one click away thanks to the sidebar, no matter what screen you're on. And the data that it pulls in is always up to date, since the dashboard pulls in new data every time you reload the page, update the date range, or switch tabs within it. All right. So then moving on to a brief overview of the charts within the dashboard. The dashboard contains several interactive charts showcasing a variety of sales and performance metrics. The primary metrics shown on the dashboard include sales by customer, part type, and by salesperson. There are also separate charts that show these categories over time, as well as a couple other charts that combine these sales metrics. All right. Then going over first chart is a sales over time chart. It's a line chart. And so basically what this allows you to do is to gain insight about your overall sales performance and to identify trends based on sales date, as well as compare it to your business's prior sales performance. And so the way it works is it has three lines, one that shows sales for the currently selected date range, one that shows sales for one period ago, and then another that shows sales from 2 periods ago. And so the reason I'm saying like period instead of just like year, as is shown here, is that the amount of time that is shown on every line is actually dynamic. So depending on what you have selected for the date range that you want to see information for, it'll actually be for a different time period. So to give an example of this, if you're looking at a specific year, it shows you the sales for every month out of that year and for the 2 years prior to that. Or if you're looking at months, it shows you the daily sales for the selected month as well as for the 2 previous months. And so, as mentioned before, the primary purpose is to allow you to track sales performance over time compared to the past trends as well. And so what we see on this chart is that this example business, if we look at the blue line for the current period or the current year, it had uncharacteristically low sales this year compared to the previous 2 years at the start, but it is making a hearty rebound going into the summer. So then moving on to our next subject, which is the sales map. So basically this chart shows you the location of each sale within the selected time period, which is determined by the customer's billing address. And so each dot on the chart is color and size coded, which basically means that the darker green and larger the dot is, the higher value of the sale. So if you were to hover over an individual sale, it would show you the customer and the sale amount as well. But since you're likely to have sales concentrating in a large area at some point on the map, if you hover over a highly congested area, as shown on the right, it will show you a zoomed in view and allow you to more easily pick out a specific point on the map. And so basically what this chart will allow you to do is to more effectively determine your business's geographic reach as well as determine your target market more effectively. So again, if we look at this chart, we can see that while the sales are largely concentrated in one area, we can also see that this example has sales in Colorado and Michigan as well. All right. Then moving on. So we have a sales over time graph. It's a stacked area chart. And so for for this example, it shows cumulative sales over time for each salesperson during the specified time period. And so since this is a stacked area chart, each line's height is added to the last in order to represent overall sales. So that basically means that if you look at the total height of all the lines, it represents the total amount of sales for every salesperson. And this allows you to compare the performance of all salespeople over time, while also seeing how much each one contributes to your business's total revenue. So basically, we can see in this example that the salesperson Greg, the bottom blue line, has rather high sales throughout the entire year, whereas Chris's sales, the top blue line, are comparatively low throughout the year, and it just makes it easy to see how everyone compares over time. And then equivalent versions of this chart exist where instead of showing sales by salesperson over time, it shows sales by part type or sales by customer. The idea is generally the same. It's just that they show part type or customer instead. All right. Then moving on to another one that covers multiple areas is a sales by just the category or a table. And so what this does is it just shows your business's total sales during the time period, broken down by either salesperson, part type, or customer. So by default, it sorts by the sales amount in descending order with the highest performance at the top. And you can change it to sort by any category by clicking on the header, just like all the other tables elsewhere within Chromium. And this chart will stay the same size as the other charts vertically, regardless of how many rows there are, by either adding a scroll bar or padding out the bottom. And what this chart will allow you to do is to easily identify how much revenue each salesperson, part type, or customer brings to your business. And so as we can see here, once again, that this example salesperson, Greg, has brought the most sales so far this year, followed by Sean, and then the rest of this example business sales team. All right. And then moving on to a chart that combines multiple categories. So this one is sales by part type and salesperson. It shows each salesperson's total sales in an easy to understand column chart while also breaking each column down into each part type that they sold. And so what this will do is it gives insight on how much revenue each individual salesperson brings in, while also showing what part types they sell the most of. So, and then to keep the chart easy to read, only the top 19 part types are shown, with the 20th colored section being reserved for other part types. And so as we can see here, the leftmost column, Adley has sold only a few different part types, whereas Greg and Tim have both sold several different types. And then we can also compare the total sales of each salesperson if we're not interested in individual part types at the moment that we're looking at it. All right. And then going to the sales by part type and salesperson, the second one, it's a tree map. So basically what this will do is it just gives you a simple at-a-glance view of each salesperson's sales compared to each other salesperson. And then, so the size and color of each box represents the value of their sales compared to all of the other salespeople. And then if you click on one of the salespeople, it shows a similar view with several boxes corresponding with the color and size corresponding to the sale amount, except this time it compares that salesperson's sales to themselves for each part type. And so, yeah. So as we can see here, we click on the bottom middle square, which is Jack, and then what it does is it zooms in, and then you can see his sales for all part types. And then after you click in, like we did here on the right, you can go back to a previous view by either right-clicking anywhere in the chart or by clicking the back arrow that appears in the chart header. And so then, yeah. And so the benefit of this chart is that it shows you proportional sales data that allows you to easily compare sales between different salespeople. And then once you click on a salesperson, allow you to see how much of each part type they are selling as well. All right. And so now that you have a general idea of all of the individual charts that are on the dashboard, I'll go over a quick overview of some of the user interaction features. And this is important because the dashboard is not just a collection of static graphics. It will adapt to you and the information that you want to see. So each chart is interactive, meaning you can click or hover on individual points of data to drill down and get more detailed information. So as we can see here on the right, you can hover on any of the data points to see exactly when the data point is from, as well as what the sales were during that time. And this is just one example. This more or less applies to all of the charts within the dashboard. Oh. All right. Oh, yeah. And then you can also change the date range that the data is pulled from right on the dashboard. And then, so yeah, by default, the dashboard shows you sales data for the current year to date. However, you can select any date range from a list of date ranges or from any date that you like to see from a date picker on the screen. And you can then watch as the dashboard adapts to this date range change in seconds. And then these date ranges are specific to each tab, so you can switch between them and it will remember what each tab was set to. So then moving on to a little demo I put together of the date range. All right, so basically what we see here is I'm going to change the date range for our overview to only cover the month of May. And this is with the date picker that was just added in the newest update. All right. And then, so we see that it adapts and then it shows sales by every day. And so then what I'm going to do here is go through and just set every other tab to a different date range. So the first one's by quarter, and this one's going to be 90 days. And then I believe this one is the previous year. And so basically what I'm showing here is that we can set every tab to a different date range. And then when I go back through them, it still remembers the first one was May, second one was previous quarter, third was last 90 days. And so basically what this will allow you to do is look at different date ranges, switch between them without having to change it every time if you want it to remember where you were. And so now that we got a brief overview of the date range, I'll go ahead and talk about the newest features that we just added and a brief preview of some upcoming ones. So basically the newest feature we've added is, as you just saw, is the ability to have multiple tabs on the dashboard, each of which will contain several charts. And so each tab has its own set of parameters, in this case, the date range as well as the date picker, it'll remember the settings of when you switch between these tabs. So currently, the contents and layout of each tab is like just set, as we have hand curated it to meet most of our users' needs. However, that doesn't necessarily apply to everyone's individual use case. And so the ability to customize this will be coming soon. You'll be able to define new reports and share them with other people in your company so you can get the data you want to see and share it accordingly. All right. And so wrapping things up, you've now heard the reasons for using our dashboard, received a brief overview of it and its interactive features, as well as heard about the newest as well as some upcoming features. With this new toolkit at your fingertips, you'll be able to track your business's performance more efficiently and adapt to your customers' needs.